Hello everybody, and welcome to the grand premiere of Natalie's Reptile Room, where this is your host, Natalie. Can you say hi?
Hi.
And I am the co-host, Kevin. We are a daddy and daughter that absolutely love reptiles. The goal of our channel is to share with you guys the awesome world of reptiles, to show you guys our collection of reptiles, and show you guys that reptiles are absolutely for everyone, and that you can be into Disney princesses, baby dolls, and slithery serpents. You love reptiles, don't you?
Yes.
You do? Yeah. What's your favorite kind of reptile?
Snakes.
You like snakes more than lizards?
I like all reptiles.
You like all reptiles? They are pretty cool, aren't they?
Yeah. Even bearded dragons.
Even bearded dragons? Those are cool too.
What are those things called that you don't see them and they transform into something that
like a butterfly?
No, like something that you can't see and it just keeps doing it.
I don't know what that is.
Is it?
So let's get into our very first video, and one disclaimer I do want to make is that although reptiles can absolutely be for everyone, even kids, is that they should never be unsupervised with the pet, because that can lead to the pet or even the kid getting hurt. So let's get into it. I figured our first video would be of our, what is this?
Savannah Monitor.
Savannah Monitor. I figured we would start with one of the more common and I guess more seen reptiles that we have is this little guy right here. So why don't you tell everybody about this little guy?
He is awesome. He has the eyes, he has the big mouth, and it looks like he has a little hair right there, but it's fine.
I think it's his tongue. The end of his tongue sticking out.
Look right there. He has that back.
Oh yeah. He is awesome though, isn't he?
But he has a really cool pattern. When you pet him a little bit, his body flats down, and he is awesome. He is my favorite animal.
He's your favorite one that you got?
Yeah.
He is pretty cool. So this is a Savannah Monitor. We currently do not have a name for him, so if anybody wants to help us out finding a name, we're all ears. These guys, monitor lizards, are hands down my favorite kind of reptile, because when it comes to something looking like a dinosaur, there's no other reptile that looks like them like a monitor lizard, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, geckos are cool, chameleons are cool, but...
Wait a minute, I was talking about chameleons that...
Oh, that can change colors, yeah, chameleons. But they're cool too, but when it comes to something looking like a dinosaur...
Well, I really like chameleons and lizards too.
And monitor lizards.
I love all reptiles.
I know you do, I know you do. So this guy here... if you want to own a pet that looks like Blue from Jurassic World, just look up an Argus monitor. I mean, they are the coolest. This particular monitor here is called a Savannah Monitor, like Natalie said. Now, these guys don't particularly have the greatest reputation as a pet. Now, whether that's warranted or not, we'll let you guys decide. But this little guy has been pretty good for us, hasn't he?
Yeah.
He started off small, and he's already getting bigger.
Yeah.
He's actually in the middle of starting to shed, so he's definitely a growing boy, isn't he?
Yeah, it's really cool right there.
Looks like he's got like a teardrop.
Yeah.
Kind of. Look, he's like falling asleep. He is. He's just falling asleep. This is actually Natalie's first Savannah Monitor. I've had a few Savannah Monitors in my lifetime, and I mean, I've had them on both the good and bad side of the spectrum. But for the most part, Savannah Monitors are great. I think that there are a lot of things that you really need to consider before getting one. A lot of things that people just are not prepared for. Let's see. So I think one of the biggest things that you need to consider when getting these guys is just the sheer size that they will eventually get when they turn into adults. A lot of people see this little guy sitting on your thumb just like he is here, and I mean, like I said, he's only a couple months old now. He's going to get much, much bigger than that. And I think that's one thing that people don't right off the bat see is here's this tiny little lizard that is sitting on your thumb like a gecko.
Still closing his eyes.
That'll pass out right in your hands. But this is a reptile that can grow up to 2.5 to 4 feet long. So he is going to get many, many times the size that he is now. I mean, these guys can get as big as a small dog. He's actually going to get bigger than Bella.
Yeah. Well, probably not big as Riley because Riley's huge.
Yeah. Maybe one day we'll introduce you guys to Bella and Riley.
Yeah, because he...
Another thing that I think certainly doesn't help these guys' cases is that you can find these guys at pretty much any reptile expo that you go to all year round. And they're very, very cheap. They're like $25 to the most expensive I've ever seen them is like $100. Every reptile show we've been to, we've seen one of these guys there, haven't we?
Yeah.
Like every single one of them. They're always selling Savannah monitors. But for $25, I mean, it really makes these guys a low-risk impulse buy. And I think that's one of the bigger issues with these guys is it's an impulse buy that they see. Like we said, this tiny little lizard that sits on your thumb. He looks adorable. He looks cute. You can set them up in a cage when they're first born like this, like a hatchling, for a pretty cheap enclosure. But he is going to get much bigger than this. And when we get into the next part, we'll explain why a lot of the price and cost factors really come into play. It's really a lot of people thinking short term. These guys can live up to 15 to 20 years. So this is a very long-term commitment. That's longer than the average lifespan of a cat or a dog. So he's going to live longer than our dogs.
Yeah.
He's going to get old. He's going to be an old man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like a lot of animals live long.
Yeah. Reptiles seem to live pretty long, a lot longer.
Yeah, than dogs.
Yeah. So let's talk about this guy's enclosure. Right now we got him in something pretty small. We're definitely going to have to get him something bigger, right?
Yeah.
We're going to have to build him something like your other monitor, something that he'll fit in. I would say that a minimum sized enclosure for one of these guys full grown is going to be at least a 6 foot by 4 foot by 4 foot enclosure. There's a lot of places that do sell enclosures that big, but we're going to build him something that'll be that big. Oh yeah, you hear the dogs in the background.
Yeah.
But we'll have to build him something that big. Now, where do you think these guys come from?
The nature maybe?
Where?
The nature?
Nature? Well, you're not wrong there. They definitely come from nature. But these guys come from the savannas and grasslands of Africa. So, what kind of temperature do you think it is in Africa?
Probably warm, like cold.
It's very warm. So it's very hot. So that's something you're definitely going to have to consider with their enclosure, is these guys need a basking spot, a place where they can sit under the heat at 130 degrees for these guys. That will taper down into the cooler areas of his enclosure to like 95 degrees. So something else to consider is the not only large enclosure you're going to need, but the super large amount of lights that you're going to need with them also.
Yeah. And speaking, and what Daddy was saying is we do have to get him a 4 feet tall.
4 foot tall.
4 foot tall enclosure and some light in there. And that's what they would need to do.
And that's a good point of it being 4 foot, because you also don't want something short where that amount of heat is going to be sitting right on top of them. That's how you'll see a lot of Savannahs, they start to get this callus kind of thing on their back. And that's from the heat of the heat lamps being so high, burning them. So you actually got to make sure that the thing that you put them in, the enclosure, is going to be tall also.
He is awesome.
He is awesome.
And if you see a dinosaur at the playground, we have him right here. And he does look like a dinosaur.
He's like a little miniature dinosaur.
Yeah. And you need to get the right temperature for them.
Right. And not only do they need heat, is they need humidity as well. And a lot of people think like the savannas of Africa, they're probably used to dry heat, but keep in mind they go from the savannas to grasslands. They also like to burrow. So these guys do need humidity as well. So that's something else you're going to have to consider in lighting. I would highly recommend not a glass terrarium with the screen lid. When you need an enclosure that traps humidity in it, the glass with a screen lid is a recipe for disaster. I would highly recommend something either plastic, PVC, or something like that for them that can really hold in the humidity of that enclosure. With heating, keep in mind that you're also going to need a UVB light. So these guys are used to constantly being out in the sun. So if you've got them in a dark room or a place in your house, they are going to need a UVB light. He's about to go to bed.
Yeah.
He is funny.
Yeah, he always does what I do. He closes his eyes and then I make
Just
up.
a little bit, and then he just slowly goes to sleep.
And then he's like,
Wow. He starts flicking his tongue.
yeah.
That's how they smell, right?
And he does that as soon as he wakes up.
I know.
I don't even do that.
You don't even do that?
No.
So with all that heat and lighting that you got, you're also going to need a bowl or something big enough that you can hold water in that they can submerge their entire body in. So you can start off with something small, but as he gets bigger, you're definitely going to need to get him something that a 4-foot lizard can put its entire body in.
It's itching me.
His claws are itching, yeah.
Yeah.
His claws are already getting a little bit longer.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know he had eyebrows.
Yeah, kind of. So then, with the humidity and everything, you're also going to need a substrate. These guys are burrows. They like to burrow in the ground, and I've seen them even make like their entire hide out of like an underground tunnel.
Daddy,
So you're definitely going to need a substrate they can dig in, right?
do you need sand for them or water or?
Probably not sand, because sand isn't good to hold in humidity. So
or
that
do you
like,
need dirt?
kind of that dirt stuff, you know, that stuff that we use. You got to use that because that holds in humidity.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll put a picture up to show what we've got them in.
Yeah, maybe we can put it like right there, over there. Well,
Oh, the link?
yeah, probably.
We'll put the link somewhere right here.
Yeah.
Right there, we'll put it.
Well,
It's okay, little guy. Alright, so finally let's get into diet. What does this guy like to eat? What are we feeding him?
crickets.
Crickets. So these guys are totally insectivores. They like bugs, crickets, mealworms, other invertebrates, stuff like that. So these guys' food should be 75%
Even
insects.
you need light with it.
Right. So 75% of their food should include some kind of insect. I've seen people feed them stuff like ground turkey, ground beef, and stuff like that. Some of that stuff I don't agree with, but I would say if you are going to go that route, it needs to be stuff that is incredibly high in protein and incredibly low in fat.
He just loves doing this, right?
That's his way of making himself bigger.
Yeah.
He's like, don't mess with me. You see how big I am?
Yeah. He's trying to look like you're a snake, right?
Kind of when he puffs out.
Yeah.
So these guys, when these guys are young like this, he's just a hatchling. So he needs to be fed on a daily basis. We feed him about how many crickets a day?
Yeah.
Yeah, we give him about 5 to 6 crickets a day. We're starting to mix in some other stuff like mealworms and stuff like that. And we'll keep you guys up to date on how he's doing with transitioning on food and how well he's eating. But he's not afraid of food. He definitely likes food. And you'll find that a common problem with Savannah monitors is obesity. So some people will just keep feeding and feeding and feeding them until they think that they're full. But these guys are like a bottomless food pit. Is you can just keep feeding them and they'll just keep eating. So you have to make sure that you're feeding them the right amount, right?
Yeah.
Not too much.
Yeah. But why is he like so cold?
Because he's cold-blooded,
Yeah.
remember?
Oh, yeah.
Because he needs the warmth.
Yeah.
So I mean, these guys are an incredibly amazing animal. And like we said, it is an animal that will live up to 15 to 20 years. If everything's done right, the enclosure's done right, you're feeding them right, they're pretty easy to take care of once you got those things down. So when I brought up I think a common issue with these guys that does get them a bad rap is that a lot of people, like we said, you see this tiny little lizard and you think that he's going to stay that small forever, that he's going to eat really small stuff and he's going to be easy to take care of. But I think what leads to a lot of the bad rap that these guys do have is that a lot of impulse buys, not understanding the full extent of how big these guys can get, the commitment of this is going to be an animal that's going to be a long-term commitment, that these guys live for up to 15 to 20 years. So it's a long-term commitment. You can't think short-term with these guys. But all in all, I would say that taking care of a Savannah Monitor isn't as hard as most people make it out to be. Like I said, I've owned a lot of them throughout my life. This is Natalie's first Savannah Monitor. I have never been bitten by a Savannah Monitor, never once. I've been bitten by other monitors, I've been bitten by snakes, but never a Savannah Monitor. And he's never bit you, right?
Yeah.
He's been a good boy. But he has been awesome so far for Natalie. Very easy to take care of for her, and we make sure that we do everything right for him, right?
Dad, do you want to pet him?
Sure.
Want to leave her?
Come in, buddy. We just want to show you to the camera. So that is our first reptile of Natalie's reptile room, our baby Savannah Monitor. So make sure you guys like the video if you found this informative. If you want to see us do more videos, well, we're definitely doing more videos. We're going to show off Natalie's entire reptile collection, and make sure you guys subscribe and get notified, because next week we're getting into what?
Snakes.
Next week we're going to pull out a snake, right?
Well, what about your little?
Well, he'll be in another video. We got plenty of reptiles to show you guys. But we'll see you next week, and you going to tell everybody bye?
Bye, guys.
Say we'll see you next week.
See you next week, and say bye to my little. Bye right here.
Oh yeah, and if you guys can think of any good names, make sure to let us know.